Hi, I'm B from Nectar Mechanics, and in today's video, we're going to be making a 3D printed, electroplated matrix of leadership. So ever since I first watched the 80s Transformers movie, I've wanted to make a matrix. It's the big MacGuffin of Transformers no matter what continuity you look at, and the new Transformers 1 film finally gave me the push to do it. This video was made possible by PCBWay, and there'll be more on them later, but for now, we need to make a 3D model. Now I'm gonna need reference images, and I really wanted to do the full gold version that's in the new film. But when I started this project, it wasn't available on streaming yet, so most of these images are kinda blurry. So if it's not entirely film accurate, that's why. Regardless, I was happy to start modeling, so let's chuck the images into Blender. Starting with a primitive sphere, I worked on the main core of the matrix. The TF1 design is like fully gold with a blue crystal in the center, and I figured color separating the parts would make my life a lot easier later on, so I did a Boolean cut with a cylinder in the center of the sphere, and then I kept that cylinder off to one side. That cylinder we can then detail to be the crystal, and because we've cut the sphere with it, it's going to line up and fit when we print it. With the handles, I tried my best to match the images I had. Making a 2D version I could then stretch into a 3D object. I'm not going to worry about blending the handles into the core yet, as it's easier to detail them separate and join them at the end. Speaking of, let's detail. The core has most of the little doodads. The ridges around the crystal, the little knobs sticking out either end, with a third asymmetrical one on the top left. The back is not likely to get seen as much, but I did make sure I gave it a couple bits, like the flowing ridges and little recessed chunks. Moving on to the handles, they needed the little ridges and indents on each corner. Now, the handles are flat, but only on the front and back. Everything else is ever so slightly curved. So I needed to make sure all the details were also curved, otherwise it would look off. Once that was sorted, I could merge the handle and core together and work on detailing the crystal. I made sure to cut the front face of that cylinder a ton of times to give me some verts to work with. Then I went into Blender's sculpt mode and gave it a cool, uneven surface to sort of match the crystal images I've got. This would have been where I called it done, but I put some screenshots in my Discord server, the Nectar Mechanics Hive Mind, it's a membership perk available now. And one of the first comments I got was, am I gonna make it glow? Well, I have to make it glow now. I've still got some old dollar store finger LEDs that I've used for years now. They're basically just an LED with a switch in a plastic case, so I got the measurements, went into FreeCAD, which is a parametric program, and got to work replicating the LED casing. FreeCAD is a lot easier to get accurate measurements with. So I made sure I used my calipers on the IRL casing, and gave myself a bit extra tolerance room. I could then upload the STL into Blender, do a Boolean cut into the back of the crystal, clean it up, add an end cap, and now we got space for an LED. So now it's time for a test print. I want to make sure all the tolerances are working, and look at that. It just glides in. Now this prototype already looks super cool, but we can dial it up to 11. PCBWay reached out and asked if I was interested in using their services, and when I found out that they do resin prints and electroplated prints, well, you know what I gotta do now. I ordered the crystal parts in their transparent blue resin, and I ordered the handle and core in their electroplated gold. And a few weeks later, parcel arrived. They were wrapped in so much bubble wrap and foam, which was great because it meant nothing was scratched or damaged, and when I finally released the parts from their packaging prison, they looked gorgeous. Now, due to how electroplating works, there's sometimes a little bit extra that needs to be dealt with. In my case, that's stem in the core. Then I realized I've made a horrible mistake. Yeah, I tested the tolerances on an FDM printer, and I also wasn't accounting for the tiny layers that the electroplating would add, which meant nothing fit properly. So I did what any person who's just been given some lovely, really nice polished electroplated parts would do. Sometimes I over-engineer my projects and make sure it works first try off the print bed. Other times, percussive maintenance is the way to go. In the end though, I did get everything to fit, and it turned out just prime. Have a look.
Now, light our darkest hour.
This is one of the coolest 3D prints I've done. It was already looking cool, and then the electroplating just really took it that extra notch. If you want to use PCBWay services yourself, I'll make sure there's a link in the description, and if you'd like to purchase the matrix files, I might put them up for sale if there's enough demand. Otherwise, if you like what you saw and you want to see more, feel free to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Farewell!